The world is not ignoring you because it is unfair. It is ignoring you because you have trained it to. Every time you watered yourself down to be accepted, every time you waited quietly for recognition instead of becoming impossible to replace, every time you chose being liked over being respected, you taught people exactly how little they needed to value you. And the brutal part? Most people never recover from this. They spend their entire lives invisible while convincing themselves they are humble. The world does not reward good intentions. It does not reward effort. It does not reward potential. It rewards perception. It rewards power. It rewards people who understand psychological positioning, which is why less capable people keep outranking you, out-earning you, and controlling rooms you should have dominated years ago. Before we begin, write this in the comments. I refuse to be overlooked, because the moment a man stops begging to be accepted, he becomes dangerous to ignore. This is not motivation. This is not a pep talk. This is a Machiavellian awakening, and if you stay with me through this, you will understand exactly why the world stopped seeing you and how to become impossible to be overlooked again. Niccolo Machiavelli understood about human nature, and the single most dangerous truth he ever revealed was this: people do not love you for who you are. They attach themselves to what you can do for them. Every relationship you have, every friendship, every alliance, every bond, all of it operates on an invisible economy of value. Machiavelli called this the condition of the unproven man, and his observation about the unproven man was precise and without mercy. The world does not owe you recognition. It does not distribute respect like charity. It does not reward potential. It responds exclusively to demonstrated, undeniable, impossible to overlook value. And if you have not built that yet, you are furniture, present in the room, completely invisible within it. That changes today. Not through motivation, not through a speech designed to make you feel temporarily powerful, through 5 cold principles that Machiavelli understood 5 centuries ago, and that the psychology of power has since confirmed with surgical precision. By the time this is done, you will understand exactly why you have been overlooked, and exactly what it takes to make that impossible going forward. The first principle is what I call the invisible tax, the price you have been paying for making yourself easy to overlook without realizing you were paying it at all. Here is the mechanism. Every time you entered a room and waited for permission to take up space, you paid. Every time you softened a position you knew was right because you were afraid of how it would land, you paid. Every time you made yourself immediately available to anyone who demanded your time without earning it, you paid. These are not small costs. They accumulate, and what they purchase over months and years of consistent payment is a reputation for being manageable, easy, replaceable. Machiavelli wrote that men judge almost entirely by what they see, rarely by what is actually there. This means the invisible tax is not just about how others treat you. It is about the signal your behavior has been broadcasting every time you walked into a room. And that signal, whether you intended it or not, has been saying the same thing for years. I can be overlooked. I will not push back. I am safe to dismiss. The world is not cruel for responding to that signal. It is simply accurate. It is reading exactly what you have been transmitting. The question is not whether the signal can be changed. It can. The question is whether you are willing to accept that changing it requires something most men are not prepared to do, stopping the transmission entirely and rebuilding it from the foundation. You do not become impossible to ignore by trying harder within the same system. You become impossible to ignore by redesigning the system itself, starting with what you project before you open your mouth. The second principle is what Machiavelli identified as the perception throne, the understanding that you are never valued for what you actually are. only for what people believe you are. This is the principle that most men spend their entire lives resisting because it feels unfair. They want to believe that genuine quality will eventually be recognized on its own terms, that if they are competent enough, honest enough, hard-working enough, the world will eventually see it and respond accordingly. Machiavelli had no patience for this belief. He called it the fantasy of the virtuous man in a world that does not operate on virtue. His observation was this: everyone sees what you appear to be. Very few experience what you truly are, and those few will never argue with the opinion of the many. Perception does not just influence how people treat you, it determines it completely. The most talented man in a room who projects insecurity will be treated as less capable than the least talented man who projects certainty. This is not a flaw in human psychology, it is a feature. The brain makes rapid judgments based on available signals because processing everyone's full reality at depth is impossible. You are being evaluated on your signals, and your signals are under your control. Your posture is a signal. The pace at which you speak is a signal. The length of the pause before you respond is a signal. Whether you hold eye contact or break it is a signal. Whether you fill silence because it makes you uncomfortable or sit inside it because you have nothing to prove, that is the most powerful signal of all. This is not deception. Machiavelli was clear on this distinction. The goal is not to manufacture a false image. The goal is to ensure that what you project accurately represents what you are actually building underneath. Most men have the substance, but undermine it with weak presentation. Most men are more capable than they appear. Closing that gap between what you are and what the world sees is not manipulation. It is the most honest and most strategic thing you can do. The third principle is the approval trap, the most expensive psychological chain a man can wear, and the one that is almost completely invisible to the man wearing it. The need for approval does not announce itself. It does not walk up to you and say, "I am limiting your power and I am going to keep doing it until you remove me." It operates quietly, through small, consistent decisions that each feel reasonable in isolation. You change your position slightly because the room seems to disagree. You soften the truth because the full version might create friction. You laugh at something that was not funny because belonging felt more important than authenticity in that particular moment. Each of these is a small transaction, and in every single one, you are the one paying. Machiavelli observed that the man who attempts to make everyone comfortable will inevitably make himself weak, not because kindness is a flaw, but because the approval-seeking that disguises itself as kindness is a signal. And the signal it sends to every room you enter is this: my sense of self depends on your response to me. My confidence is borrowed from your reaction, which means I can be managed through withholding it. Dark psychology confirms this with a precision that should disturb you. The moment someone identifies that your behavior is approval-dependent, they have found the mechanism that controls you. They do not need force. They do not need leverage. They simply need to withhold or threaten to withhold the validation you have trained yourself to require, and you will adjust every time, because the withdrawal of approval registers in the approval-dependent brain as a genuine threat to survival. The cure is not arrogance. Arrogance is just approval-seeking pointed in the opposite direction, performing superiority for an audience instead of performing agreement. The cure is detachment, a settled, cold, internally anchored sense of self that does not require the room's participation to remain stable. When you reach that state, something shifts in how every room responds to you. The person who no longer needs approval becomes the one everyone instinctively seeks it from. That reversal is not coincidence. It is the direct result of removing the mechanism that made you manageable. The fourth principle is what I call dangerous competence, the level of skill that moves beyond impressive and begins to feel threatening to everyone around you. Most men distribute their effort. They learn enough of many things to function across multiple domains without mastering any of them. They spread themselves across a wide surface and cover it with a thin, consistent layer of adequacy. This feels productive. It looks busy, and it produces exactly the kind of result the world assigns to it: moderate recognition, easy replacement, and the specific quiet invisibility that comes from being useful but never essential. Machiavelli observed that the man who makes himself genuinely indispensable holds a position that even the most powerful cannot easily remove, not because he demands protection, because removing him causes damage that no one is willing to absorb. That is the level: not impressive, indispensable, not useful, irreplaceable. And the only path to irreplaceable runs directly through a level of focused, obsessive, sustained development of a single capability that most men are not disciplined enough to reach. Dark psychology identifies this as the halo effect in reverse, weaponized in your favor. When someone encounters a person with genuine, undeniable mastery in one domain, their brain automatically extends that authority across every other dimension of that person's existence. You become deeply skilled at one thing, and the world begins to assume you are formidable at everything. That assumption is worth more than any credential, any title, any performance of expertise you could construct. But it demands something the approval-seeking version of you cannot give it. It demands hours that produce no immediate recognition. It demands the willingness to be intermediate, visibly unfinished, publicly developing, for long enough that the process has time to produce something real. It demands that you fall in love, not with the outcome, but with the work itself, with the daily, unglamorous, unwitnessed act of becoming more dangerous at something than you were the day before. Machiavelli did not admire the man who spoke about what he was capable of. He admired the man who had built so much genuine capability in silence over time that when the moment of crisis arrived, he moved with a certainty that made everyone else look like they were still figuring out which direction to face. That is the product of dangerous competence, not performance. Evidence. The fifth principle is the untouchable mind, the internal architecture that makes you impossible to destabilize, regardless of what the world applies from the outside. Machiavelli studied the collapse of powerful men and found a consistent pattern. They were rarely destroyed by forces stronger than themselves. They were destroyed by their own minds at the critical moment. Fear made them hesitate when decisiveness would have saved them. Pride made them react when stillness would have protected them. Emotional contamination turned what should have been a strategic calculation into a personal crisis, and personal crises produce personal decisions in situations that required political ones. He distilled this into a single observation that has survived 5 centuries because it remains completely accurate. The man who cannot govern himself will never govern anything else. And in the modern context, the man whose internal state is controlled by external events has handed every person and every circumstance he encounters a lever connected directly to his behavior. He does not make decisions. Decisions are made through him by whoever manages to pull the right lever at the right moment. Dark psychology frames this as psychological frame control. Every interaction you have is, at some level, a negotiation between your psychological frame and the frame of the person you are engaging with. The stronger frame does not win through argument or volume or aggression. It wins through stability. The person who remains internally consistent, regardless of what is applied from outside, holds the stronger frame automatically. And the stronger frame shapes the interaction, determines who adjusts, who defers, who unconsciously restructures their behavior to fit the reality of the person who refused to shift. Building the untouchable mind is not a single decision. It is a daily practice made up of 10,000 small choices. Every time something provokes you and you process it instead of performing it, you add a layer. Every time criticism arrives and you extract what is useful and discard what is noise, you add a layer. Every time you absorb pressure without releasing it as reaction, you add a layer. Over time, those layers become walls, and walls become fortresses, and a man inside a fortress of his own construction cannot be reached by the ordinary weapons most people carry. He is not cold in the sense of being disconnected. He feels everything. He simply does not perform it for an audience that will use the performance against him. He processes internally, responds strategically, and presents to the world a surface so consistently composed that people stop testing it, not because they lost interest in destabilizing him, but because they learnt through repeated failure that it cannot be done. The version of you that existed before this video had a specific set of characteristics. It waited for the room to decide its value. It adjusted its signal based on the feedback it received from people who had no right to calibrate it. It spread its energy across everything and mastered nothing. It carried the weight of everyone's approval as though their opinion was load-bearing infrastructure in its own sense of self. That version was not weak. It was simply operating without the right information. Now you have the information. The invisible tax stops being paid the moment you stop transmitting the signal that made you easy to overlook. The perception throne is occupied the moment you begin engineering what the world sees with the same precision you apply to what you are actually building. The approval trap opens the moment you detach your internal stability from the external opinions that were never qualified to determine it. Dangerous competence begins accumulating the moment you stop distributing your effort and start concentrating it. And the untouchable mind is built one daily decision at a time. Every choice to process instead of react, to absorb instead of perform, to hold still when the pressure says move. This is not a transformation that announces itself. It does not arrive with a moment of clarity or a dramatic turning point. It accumulates in the dark, in the unglamorous hours when no one is watching and nothing is applauding, and the only witness to the work you are doing is you. And then one day, without warning, without ceremony, the room responds differently. Not because you demanded it, because you made it impossible for it to respond any other way. That is the Machiavellian way. Not louder, not harder, undeniable. Stay cold, stay calculated, stay ahead, go, build, lead, win.